Welcome into Payoff Pitch, Action Network's MLB betting podcast. We are presented by our fine friends at BetMGM. Brendan Glasheen, joined by Sean Zerillo and Mike Iannello for Friday, June 14th, Best Bets in Major League Baseball. You can hear Best Bets every Monday, Tuesday, and Friday mornings during the regular season. So subscribe to the podcast. If you have not done so already, wherever you listen to your podcast, you can also find us on the Action Network YouTube page. We have other short videos that come out as well that cover baseball. So feel free, and you should, subscribe to the channel to get all the dings to your phone to check out our content. Thursday night here for us. We are doing this the night before. The other day we were doing this, Tuesday they did the night before, but also Monday we're doing it morning of. Stuff comes up, okay? Basketball's almost over. We'll be getting the hang of this thing. So we're getting ready for Friday's slate, full 15-gamer. Let's jump into it. No Cubs early game. They're all starting at night, so another missed opportunity for day baseball, which that blew my mind on, was it Wednesday? Wednesday. No day games. Unbelievable. Anyway, Zerillo, I'll turn to you first. Big slate. Where do you see an edge for tomorrow?
Taking the Cubs, and have not seen a first five line because you do not get those Cubs first five lines typically overnight. Very limited availability just because Wrigley Field weather tends to influence a lot of how those games play out. So books like to hold them back to the morning when they generally release the totals. But Cubs, first full game, up to about -120 currently. Have to adjust for the bullpen. They just wrapped up their game in Tampa Bay. As I'm talking currently, Mark Leiter Jr. blew a save. Tyson Miller threw for his second consecutive day. So when I projected this earlier, I did bake in some bullpen usage tonight. So I think my price target actually may be closer to -125. And this was something that I just had to recheck to make sure that my model inputs were correct. I'm, handicapping as we talk about Sunday night, Thursday night for these slates, putting my own lineups in now, where typically I have lineups that refresh automatically that I'll get about an hour from now. So doing the best I can in terms of projecting those lineups out, but I've done, a very solid job in terms of getting CLV with these overnight bets that we've had on Payoff Pitch Sunday and Thursday recordings now. So Interested to see where this line goes, but I just think the price is too short for the Cubs considering they have the better starting pitcher in this matchup. Jordan Wicks making his first start back since coming off of the IL with a forearm strain, but looked good in a relief appearance, threw more than 3 innings, pitched into a 4th inning, got an extra out. He has a expected ERA around 4 this season. His strikeout minus walk rate is above the major league average. And in that last stint, his pitch modeling metrics aligned with where they were previous before his injury. In fact, his fastball velocity out of the bullpen was the highest it's been all year. So I don't really have any concerns about him coming off of that forearm strain. I'm still deducting a little bit relative to where I would project him right before that IL stint. I would have upgraded him closer to that projected or that expected ERA of 4. I do have him closer to 4.3, which was my preseason number on him. So not even using the best projection I can use on Wicks, but I am low on Kyle Gibson, 3.7 ERA, but an expected ERA north of 5 for Gibson. I think he's a regression candidate. It's the same thing we talk about with a lot of these regression candidate pitchers. Low BABIP, high strand rate. He's exhibiting both this season, particularly the batting average on balls in play, 270 versus a 300 career average. The Cubs are the better starter. I prefer their position player group. They got healthy recently, Suzuki, Nico Horner back in the lineup. So they are a much deeper position player group than they have been through much of the season. The one concern is the Cardinals bullpen. So I'm probably going to be targeting Cubs first 5 as well. That's why I mentioned the first 5 line off the top. I project the first 5 line closer to -160, the full game line closer to -135. So even at -110 up to -125 on the Cubs for the full game. But my first 5 targets likely going to be closer to -145, even -150. So the Cubs in both halves, my best bet for Friday slate.
I'm sorry. I'm a doorknob. There is a 220 Cubs game. I jumped ahead because the Yankees and the Red Sox, and I got all into my Red Sox head. And Mike Iannello is just going to go to the very next game. So the Cubs are at 220 at Wrigley Field tomorrow. It's not the patent Cubs 0.5 from one of our former comrades here at the Action Network. You can figure that out if you're a loyal listener. It's an inside joke. Mike Iannello, how are you? What do you have for us? The best bet for Friday?
I'm good. Yeah, I got to be honest. I don't love doing the night recordings because I'm a smart man.
You're doing it.
I'm a smart man, and as a smart man, I like to use Zerillo's projections to kind of base my picks. I either use it to kind of get me started or confirmation one I already like. So I feel like I'm naked coming in blind without knowing where Zerillo has lines. I know I'm already against him on one, which I don't love. But hopefully he's on my side with this one. I know Brendan's not, though. For my best bet, I'm going with the Yankees, minus 155. Luis Gil is having a Cy Young caliber season. He has been the breakout star, at least for the first half of the year, especially without Garrett Cole. It's been huge for the Yankees. He's 8-1, 2.04 ERA, 2.64 expected ERA. He's allowed more than one run just once in his last 8 starts. He's been nails. He has over a 30% strikeout rate. He's limiting hard contact at an elite level. He's kind of always had this stuff and this upside. He's been hurt. He's battled injuries. And obviously his big thing is just control. If he doesn't walk 7 batters, he's nails. He throws a 97-mile-an-hour fastball. It's been nearly unhittable, flying a 137 average, 233 weighted on base average. He pairs that with a changeup that's been even better. He's got a nasty slider. He just uses those 3 pitches, but they've all been really effective. So it's working for him. And then Brayan Bello on the other side for the Sox. He's really struggled recently. He's allowed at least 3 runs in each of his last 5 outings. He's got a 4.22 expected ERA. His hard hit rate's over 42%. And Bello relies mostly on his sinker. That's what he throws like 55% of the time. And it's been absolutely crushed. He's allowing a 337 average, a 412 weighted on base average against it. And do you guys know who hits sinkers better than any team in the league by a pretty wide margin? That would be the Yankees. I mean, to be fair, the Yankees have been hitting everything right now, but they crush sinkers. Judge especially. Judge and Soto are first and second in the league in OPS. I mean, Judge is on a different planet right now. He's got 8 home runs in the last 2 weeks, sitting over 400. I put in our action Slack, his hits plus runs plus RBI prop bet was 3.5 yesterday. I don't even know I've ever seen that before.
Never seen that for a non-Mexico City game. Yeah, that's ridiculous.
And the juice was only plus 110. Like, it wasn't like you were getting it plus 180. I haven't looked. I don't know if he went over it, but I'm like, he's unconscious right now. Stanton's playing well. Verdugo's playing well. Brendan, you'll appreciate this. If you want some fun props, I love giving out props here. Doesn't Verdugo seem like the type of guy that is going to be such an asshole this entire series? Like, can you just picture him getting booed to hell by Red Sox fans as he celebrates like crazy after smacking one off the wall? So
I don't know. He was pretty likable. The manager didn't like him.
Well, he was likable because he was on your team.
Oh.
Because I absolutely hated him when he was on the Sox. I can just see him like rubbing it in the Sox fans, being back in Boston for the first time. So I might look for Verdugo props just because I feel like he's going to turn heel pretty strongly in this environment.
Yeah, there was a disconnect with him and Alex Cora towards the end. Well, he was showing up late, then Cora benched him. There was just always some I think Cora did it more for like motivational purposes. Like he thought he could get through to him, and it just never worked out. So yeah. Zerillo, do you see an edge on the Yankees? Gil, by the way, 18-1 to win Cy Young. We had a lot of Cy Young guys in the AL going tomorrow, or going Friday.
Yeah, he's odds on for AL Rookie of the Year too, minus 125, minus 135 ahead of Mason Miller at this point, and there really hasn't been anybody super impressive in the AL field, so it might be his to lose at this point. You know, they're probably not going to limit his innings. Maybe at most they stick him in the bullpen, but Miller's not going to pass him. You know, if he racks up a few more really good starts. The one concern with Luis Gil is I want to get this correct because it's absurd. A 185 batting average on balls in play and a 82.8% strand rate. So those are, 100 points and 10% relative to the major league average that he's overachieving. He's been tremendous. 2.6 expected ERA. The stuff is elite. He has the command right now. Command can be a little bit wonky, though, and he's still a young pitcher. So maybe the walks start piling up at some point. He has a 12% walk rate. He is walking a lot of guys. They're just not coming around to score. So curious to see. I expect him to maintain a low BABIP. I think he can be a low BABIP guy and finish below the major league average pretty consistently. He gets weak contact. He has a 29% hard hit rate. So I basically had to move Heel his projected range, right? The projections out there, the public projections, everybody's between 3.8 and 4.2 on him. Most of them are around 3.8. I have him closer to like a 3.3 type pitcher, which is it's a high end number 2 for me, like the low end number 1s. That's where I'm using him right now. And he's outpitched that. But if I was using a pure projection, I would be betting against them. But it's not a guy I want to bet against right now. And I think a guy who's being under projected because of how well he's pitching. And, you know, the projection systems, the forecast just didn't see this coming into the year. But the stuff plus justifies what he's doing. It's just maybe the BABIP catches up with him at some point.
He's like a good goalie in hockey. His PK percentage is up there. The way he's
also like, I feel like a hard guy to project too, because between like injuries and stuff, like, you know, he made 7 starts before this season.
Yeah.
So I feel like even the projections, like, you're kind of running blind. He missed, you know, most of the last 3 seasons. So even the projections are kind of like, they're kind of guessing, but they haven't really had much to go on.
Yeah, he's got a 112 stuff plus though, which is like the major league leaders have like a 116, you know, as starting pitcher. So he's not far off. Like he's pitched justifiably in that range, but in 95 location plus that high walk rate, you know, you could see the skill slippage happening at some point. Like there's a reason this could all fall apart if the walks keep piling up, if the balls start falling in play, the runners start coming around to score, but he looks legit. I'm buying into it.
Okay, let's find out if we're going to fade the public. This one's interesting. I had been saying, I mean, listen, I don't get picks, but I had been saying, look, hey, Philly's coming off London. Then they got to go 1 day off, go right to Boston. And the Red Sox are slamming them. They're going to take 2 out of 3, it looks like. And then the Phillies play tomorrow night in Baltimore. Line available right now, Phillies plus 110, Orioles minus 130, Kyle Bradish on the mound for Baltimore, and Ranger Suarez, who is one of their core 4 pitchers right now, off to an amazing start. Money's piling in on Baltimore, 86% of the bets, 99% of the cash. Is the public right, Zerillo, that the Phillies, this is just, it's not an indictment of how good of a team they are. This is just a tough stretch.
It is extremely tough, and they're even playing late into the night on Thursday and then have to travel overnight, get in, whereas Baltimore was already at home today. So travel, rest advantage for Baltimore as well. Not a significant rest advantage, but by a matter of hours, and they're going to get a full night's sleep at home where the Phillies are traveling overnight down from Boston. So you factor that in as well. You know, Kyle Bradish is a guy we've been high on since his first start on the podcast. That was around the time pitch modeling metrics were starting to come more into the public sphere. And he was a guy whose minor league stuff plus numbers really popped off. We were very high on Kyle Bradish, and he's been even better this season than he was last year. His slider was the best pitch in baseball by a pitch run value last season. It's been even better this year. He shaved 20 points off of his expected batting average, more than 100 points off of his expected slugging percentage on the pitch. His strikeout rate is up about 6% this year. So he's only behind, among pitchers who have thrown, I think, 30 innings, Skeens, Glasnow, and Garrett Crochet in strikeout rate right now. I said coming into the year that Corbin Burns wasn't the Orioles' best pitcher. I picked the wrong guy. I picked Grayson. I think Kyle Bradish is better. I really do. They have an elite trio plus this offense. If there was one team I think should go out and get both Luis Robert and Garrett Crochet and just dump their farm system right now, it's the Orioles. This team is built to win right now. These guys are all up. They have an elite trio of starting pitchers. They haven't re-signed Burns as of yet, but they do have him for this year. Go all in. I think they're ready with this trio of starting pitchers to really make a move come October if they're all healthy. So I do like this Orioles team quite a bit. They were difficult to project coming into the year just because the sample size of what they had done wasn't substantial, but they continue to overachieve relative to all of their player projections, and they just have so much depth, they can't be bad. So I show a bigger edge here for the first 5 innings than I will for the full game. I make the full game line about minus 135. My cutoff price that I set for myself was Orioles minus 125. The Phillies just have the better bullpen, and I really don't want to play against their bullpen where possible, but I do make Bradish a better starting pitcher than Ranger Suarez, and I make that first 5 line about minus 155. So I'm waiting for that first 5 bet on the Orioles, but I also bet the under here. I made this total closer to 7.5. So if you can get an under 8 at minus 106, that would be a bet for me as well. The wind's blowing out to left field. Camden Yards tomorrow, but that is something that I think is now over-adjusted for or incorrectly adjusted for given the wall that they have out there. When the wind is blowing out to left field, in Baltimore, it really doesn't mean anything to me anymore with how far back that wall is. Like, it's not hurting these starting pitchers giving up long fly balls that are just going to get caught anyway, or at worst bounce off the wall for a double. So yeah, the wind at any other park would bump this park factor up closer to 20% for me. In Baltimore, it's probably like 8%, 10%. So under, and Baltimore first 5 for me.
Okay. Mike, how about you? Is this a tough spot for the Phillies given their travel to London one day, Boston, then heading right to Baltimore?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I'm staying away from the side. I don't know. I feel like I always have a soft spot for the Phillies, and I just don't really want to bet against them. But I'm with Drill on the under. I echo everything he said about Kyle Bradish, and then you look at what Ranger Suarez has done all year. He's second in the league in ERA. He's I think 10-1. He's been a guy I feel like has been criminally underrated for the last like 3 or 4 years. Like there was it 2 years ago when they bounced him around from the rotation to he was the closer for a little bit. He was their middle relief guy, and he just was kind of great in every role. He really solidified himself in the rotation now. I feel like everyone thinks about, Wheeler and Nola, but you can make an argument he's their number 2 guy going forward. So I'm still really high on Suarez. Then you look at the Phillies lineup, especially, you got, they just announced Real Muto's having surgery. He's going to be out, at least a month. So you lose that bat from their lineup. You got Brandon Marsh is hurt. He played in Reading today. Alec Boehm's really slowed off from his great start. Bryson Stott's kind of been slow a little bit. Trey Turner obviously is still hurt. Schwarber's been boomer bust over the last few weeks where he's got a few home runs, but he really hasn't been hitting for average anymore like he did at the beginning of the year. So I'm kind of just with Rizzo on the under. I think there's a good chance. I saw one book open at 8.5 with some juice. I took that. I know Zerillo got the, minus 105.8. I think both those numbers will probably be pretty outdated by morning, and we're going to be looking at 7.5s across the board. So this whole part might be outdated, but if you can get the 8, I like that in this game as well.
Yeah, Ranger's legit. His strikeout minus walk rate's up 9% this season. He's finally healthy. He's dealt with injuries throughout his career, but you look at his location plus numbers, the command this year, it's all better. He's clearly just feeling healthy and suppressing hard contact, and what he's doing is legitimate. I agree with you, Mike. When you said he's probably their number 2 going forward, I think he's better than Nola at this point. And that speaks volumes with regards to the quality of their rotation, especially because I really like Christopher Sanchez too, but then their bullpen might be the best in the NL. I think it's the best in the NL. I'd probably rank the Guardians like slightly ahead of them or neck and neck, but I think they're 1-2 in baseball in terms of bullpens. So
this is the year for the Phillies. If they, after the run they've had, if they don't, I don't know that there's ever been a more maybe that Dodgers team, but like a more like win or bust kind of year. Like after the last 2 years they've had getting so close, not that you root for injuries, but as soon as the Braves lost Strider and Acuna, that Phillies lineup should have better looked at each other and said, guys, this is our time.
Yeah, but in the same respect, this is finally the stretch of the season where they're playing teams that are above 500. They've been playing weak teams all year. Just lost Real Muto. Trey Turner about to come back maybe soon, but not quite back yet. So
yeah, you hope
right now.
You hope they're getting their injuries out of their way in June and July. Hopefully.
Yeah, this might be their rough stretch for like a week, 10 days through the end of June, and then after that they'll get back on track. I think if it's going to happen.
Yep.
Okay, let's head over to our underdog segment. As we said earlier, with Heel pitching tomorrow for the Yankees, there are some American League Cy Young candidates on the mound, including Tarek Skubal, Zerillo, visiting those annoying, can't figure out yet Houston Astros.
Yeah, so Skubal, obviously not a guy you want to bet against blindly, and you do have to note that the Astros had off today. Detroit played, had to travel. Didn't have to travel overnight. They'll get in, probably get a full night's rest, but you still have to dock them about 1 to 2% for travel, for rest, relative to what the Astros had. The Astros have the better position player group. I know Kyle Tucker's injured. They have the better position player group. They have the better bullpen. And Hunter Brown, if you remove the blow up that he had against the Royals and the other struggles he had earlier in the year where I surmised that he was probably tipping his pitches. Mm-hmm. They stuck him in the bullpen. They used an opener in front of him on May 11th. Since then, 2.9 ERA, 3.1 expected FIP, 38 strikeouts, 11 walks, and 34 innings. He's pitching exactly like I expected him to pitch coming into the year, which was potentially as the Astros' best starting pitcher. I thought he could surpass Fromber, and he always had the pedigree. You know, the Justin Verlander comps, it's always been there. He just hasn't put it together. He might be putting it together right now. I think he has 23 strikeouts over his past 3 starts. The strikeouts are coming back up. He's getting picked back up in fantasy leagues. Like, people see it coming together. And I think you just have to disregard the early season blowups that he had and realize that he's probably the pitcher that, if you look at every projection system out there, has him around a 3.7 or 3.8 FIP for the rest of the season. That's tremendous. That's a number 2 starter. That's like a high end number 3 or a lower end number 2. So I think Hunter Brown could be extremely effective the rest of the way for the Astros. I would buy on Hunter Brown. I've been betting on him in recent starts, and I think those blowups early provided value on him of late. So the Astros, to me, would bet up to -115, projected it closer to -125. Obviously, staying away from the first 5 innings was Scooble, but I think they could take it late with the bullpens.
All right. Mike, how about you? Underdog for Friday.
I'm taking Cincinnati +120 against Milwaukee. I just don't see how this game isn't priced as a pick'em. I think our arguments are going to come down to, you know, you use your model and obviously very well, and you're more projection based, or I kind of am looking at recent form, and I think that's where we're going to disagree here. Because when you look at, you know, the Reds started off the year crazy slow. They had a, you know, huge losing streak in May, but they've really turned things around since the end of May. And if you look at what these two teams have done coming into this game since over the last 3 weeks, since, you know, the last week of May-ish, Cincinnati's 13-5. They have the best record in the NL over the last 3 weeks. Milwaukee's 12-7, so they're right up there. Cincinnati is 7th in WRC+. Milwaukee's 13th. Reds are 3rd in scoring. Brewers are 7th. You switch over to the pitching sides. Both these teams have elite bullpens. Depending on what number you use, it's kind of, they're pretty much next to each other in every metric I could find, just flipped. You know, the Reds are 5th in bullpen ERA. Milwaukee is 6th. If you look at strikeout minus walk percentage, Reds are 14th. Milwaukee's 15th. And then, while these numbers aren't great, the starting pitchers have been similar over that stretch as well. In the last 3 starts, Hunter Green has allowed 10 runs with 18 strikeouts and 8 walks, where Freddie Peralta has allowed 7 runs with 21 strikeouts and also 8 walks. I think something's really off with Peralta since the start of the season. You know, he looked like he was NL Cy Young after the first month or so, but in his last start, his fastball was sitting just 93 miles per hour. He had 5 walks against the Tigers. He managed just 3 strikeouts. He got pulled in the 4th inning. So something looks off with him. He's kind of looked off the last few starts. And for Peralta, he's not a guy who generates ground balls really at all. So he's not getting double plays. So if he's going to allow walks, he needs strikeouts to get out of jams. And I think that could be a problem if his velocity continues at that, you know, 93 mile an hour rate. And then, you know, Hunter Green obviously also struggles with his command, but he's been that way his whole career. I think we know that. I think that's baked into this number. Green has a 3.03 expected ERA this season. He's still pumping 90 on the radar gun. So I love Green's stuff. And like I said, I think Green is kind of getting priced for his command issues, where I don't think Peralta is necessarily getting priced for his current form with the drop in velocity and, you know, the recent walk history. So all this to say, based on what I've seen from these two teams the last 3-ish weeks, I think they're pretty much a wash across the board. So I'll take the Reds at +120. I think this is an absolute coin flip game.
Sean, you want to respond now? Because I know you're going to get to the Brewers.
Yeah, so I have a few more final bets. So I like the under in this game, I should mention, off the top. But yeah, so the Brewers direct rebuttal. So Peralta's strikeout minus walk rate is identical to last year, which is odd because, as Mike said, the command is definitely a bit worse. His location plus rating is way down, but his stuff plus rating is up. His fastball is grading out better. His slider is grading out significantly worse. So I'm not really sure what's going on with Peralta. But that expected ERA is up about a half a run, 3.3 versus 3.8, even though that strikeout minus walk rate aligns with last season. And stuff plus up, location plus down. Generally, stuff influences more than location data. So I don't really know what to make of like his current form to date. Hunter Green, I think, is even more interesting to talk about because he does have that 3 expected ERA, but his strikeout rate is down this year. And his hard hit rate is down 10%. But his fly ball rate is the same it's been for the past 3 years. He allowed 1.7 home runs per 9 in his rookie year. It was 1.5 last year. He's at 0.8 this season with basically the same thing going on. So the profiles for both of these guys are like really odd, to be honest with you. My difference in the game and how I get the Brewers to minus like 140-ish here is defense. The difference in defense between these two teams is worth about 4% for me. Now, with Hunter Green on the mound, striking guys out, with Peralta on the mound, striking guys out, fewer balls in play. So less of an influence on this particular matchup than it would have on a different day with guys who are going to allow more balls in play. But that said, it's still about a 4% edge on any given night, the Brewers defense over the Reds defense for me, given their regular lineups.
I have a follow-up question for you, Sean.
Sure, yeah.
Just I was thinking about it while I was writing this up. I mentioned, over the last 3 weeks, the Reds have really bounced back. They have the best record in the NL. They're 7th in the league in WRC+. And that's, by the way, with De La Cruz has been, like, ice cold. So that actually, I would hope that ends today or Friday for my bet. But you look at, like, Candelario's really gotten going. TJ Friedel's back in the lineup. Stevenson's been crushing the ball. Spencer Steer, Jake Fraley. Their lineup is deep. They're all hitting the ball well. So my question to you is, if you look right now, the Brewers have a 6.5 game lead in the NL Central. Thank God I took that future with you as well. So whether you have the Brewers or not, do you see any value on the Reds as a future? They're currently plus 900 to catch the Brewers in the division. But one I was more so looking at and kind of intrigued, the Reds are plus 300 to make the playoffs. They're a half a game out of the wild card. And Atlanta and San Diego are the first 2 spots. And then it's San Francisco, the Cardinals, and the Cubs are the other teams in the mix. I still think the Cardinals stink, personally. But do you think there's any value on the Reds plus 300 to make the playoffs?
Their bullpen is better than people think. And they're still going to get Christian Encarnacion Strand back. Unfortunately, Matt McClain, I believe, is out for the year.
Yeah.
And they don't really have, so they're going to get Noelvi Marte back, too. So that I actually just realized that. So getting CES and Marte back, having an underrated bullpen, and they have a fairly aggressive GM in terms of if they're around in the hunt, I think they may actually look to add pieces. So yeah, it's an interesting point in a division that I think is really been odd, aside from the Brewers playing how I expected them to. The Cubs have really underachieved. The Cubs offense is really underachieved. So I'd have to look further into the math where Fangraphs, Bakota, et cetera, have them projected. But considering they're going to add 2 significant lineup pieces probably to this team, and I really like Stevenson. I'm high on Steer. I love Ellie. So I like their lineup. I don't know what to make of their rotation. But every time I dig into their bullpen metrics, they rank really highly, not in terms of underlying metrics, but also pitch modeling metrics. So, yeah, this Reds team might have some juice in a division that is strange because the Pirates, with their 2 pitchers, they seem like the potential fun team to bet. But I don't like their lineup anywhere near as much as I like the Reds lineup.
The Pirates are one of the teams where you're every team that's playing them should start counting ahead to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to try to figure out are we going to skip those 2? Because if you catch them on the 3 days, it's not Skeens and Jones. You're oh, thank God.
Yeah, but I'm on the Cardinals with you. The Cubs, I've thought since the beginning, the Cubs should be the team that wins that division, but they're just not playing up to expectations. And I'd take the Reds certainly over the Pirates. So
do you think you'd be more likely to want to just take that plus 900, even if it was just as a hedge for the Brewers, or the plus 300 to just make the playoffs?
I think playoffs could be interesting at plus 300. I think the Brewers are safe. They have enough pitching. They're going to get Devin Williams back, most likely. I mean, their lineup ranks top 10 against both lefties and righties. They have really good splits. Over the past 30 days, they're top 10 against lefties and righties. They've been solid all year, the Brewers offense, and I just don't think people have bought into this position player group. Yelich and Contreras are both all-stars. It's a good team. It's a good team.
As much as I said the Reds have the best record in the NL over the last 3 weeks, the Brewers have the second best, so it's not like they're fading.
No, they're a solid team. I think the Guardians and the Brewers, like, I'm surprised they're playing as well as they have, relative to the numbers I bet them at, but they're solid teams. I don't expect them to go away despite the Bieber injury and, the injuries the Brewers have had. I think those teams are both pretty solid in the Central Division. So, but yeah, wild card I think is interesting. I still like the Giants to potentially make a run if Snell comes back healthy. If they add a left-handed bat or two, I think the Giants could be interesting. They just have a lot of pitching depth, and that bullpen gives them a high floor. But you'll make me think about the Reds in the next few days for sure.
Pacoda gives the Reds 14% chance to make the playoffs, just under 9% wild card. Giants, I'm glad you brought them up because they're the next team just ahead of them at 15% wild card, Pacoda, Giants, and just shy of 16% playoffs.
Yeah, Fangraphs has them at about 23% as of tonight. So that would be 23% is about plus 335. So not technically value at plus 300, but I've, found my best edges on make-miss playoff bets going against the math. Like the Royals early in the season was against the math everywhere. That was just a read based on vibes, and that has worked out well so far. So the D-backs last year, plus 450 in April, that was vibes. That was not math. So,
yeah,
I don't know. I'm willing to go against projections more if I really like a team.
We're not going to. The Padres of last year still.
That
was math. That was math, not vibes.
Think about all the teams I just named in the mix. The Padres, the Giants, the Cardinals, the Cubs. The Reds are going to be the most fun team to root for in September. So if you're just like, I just want something to cheer for down the stretch because my team sucks, the Reds will be fun to root for late in the year.
Okay, good stuff. Good breakdown there of the Central. Talking Brewers and Reds. They go head-to-head starting tomorrow night and into the weekend. All right, a couple more from Ianello. We mentioned some American League Cy Young candidates. Cole Reagans is pitching against the Dodgers tomorrow. That's interesting. And I was just looking up the left-handed splits for guys like Freeman and Ohtani. Ohtani's just shy of batting 300. Betts hits lefties pretty well. Mike, is there do you think the line's in a good position to, despite their bullpen woes, to take the Royals at plus 130?
Yeah, let's be clear. This is Royals' first five. I'm glad you mentioned the splits because that's the only reason I haven't pulled the trigger. And who knows? I don't know if I'll decide to. But yeah, I think the gap between Reagans and Stone is a lot bigger than the ERAs might show. Obviously, Stoney has the better ERA, but I think Reagans is an elite pitcher. He's got an over 30% strikeout rate. Stone does not really strike out many guys. And obviously the Dodgers have the big names and, their offense mashes, but I do think they've been a little bit more top heavy than I thought they'd be the Royals I just think are super underrated. That both offenses are in the top 10 in WRC plus, weighted on base average. I honestly just think the only reason I didn't pull the trigger was because of the splits advantage. The Dodgers are in their better splits. The Royals are in their lesser splits. So that scares me away. I think right now the full game line actually has ticked up since I wrote it down. It's now plus 138. Okay. It looks like the only opening I see on the first five for Kansas City is plus 114. I'd probably want a little bit more. I don't know what Zerillo has it projected at, but if that ticked up to like plus 125 maybe, I'd probably fire on the Royals.
Yeah, that's about what I make it, is 125. I again, like, this is based off of lineups that I did by myself. There are people who are better at projecting playing time than me. I may miss a catcher or what have you, but yeah, I make it about plus 125. So my target would normally be 135 as of right now, but the Dodgers game just started tonight. You never know what happens.
Yeah, the only one that kind of jumped out at me too was the Nationals with Mackenzie Gore on the mound. I don't know who's pitching for the Marlins, so there's not a line out there, but yeah. I love Gore, and I also love backing bad teams when they have a good starting pitcher on the mound because you kind of get a decent price because the Nationals suck. But I love Gore, and I think he's, people really cooled off him since he was considered a top prospect. You look at I think it was 2000 prospect rankings. Like Mackenzie Gore is ahead of Tariq Skubal. He's ahead of Grayson Rodriguez. I think like he's a lot ahead of Julio Rodriguez. Like was a higher rated prospect than a lot of these big guys. But it kind of cooled off. But he looks back into that form. 3.44 ERA, career best year in like every statistical category. Strikeout rate is up, walk rate's down. barrel rates down. So and Miami is one of the few teams that I give the Nationals a pretty decent advantage against, especially on offense. So I'll look to back the Nationals with Gore, assuming we get a somewhat reasonable number in this one.
Okay. Everyone good? I think that's it.
I got a couple more unders. Twins under 8.5. I think Mitch Spence is really interesting. He was a Rule 5 pick by the A's from the Yankees. He has above average pitch modeling metrics, 101 stuff plus, 103 pitching plus. Spent time between the rotation and bullpen, but has a really good slider, has a bad fastball, so he just throws cutter, slider, curveball. Interesting mix, but he's been very effective. 3.2 expected ERA. And Simeon Woods Richardson, 3.6 expected ERA, 15% strikeout minus walk rate, so that's above average. Doesn't have great stuff, but has really good command, 107 location plus. So I like both starters in this matchup. I think they're both underrated, no-name guys. So the under 8.5 between Twins and A's, and then the Mets under 8, backing Matt Waldron to keep doing his thing, backing the hot hand knuckleballer. I don't know, from my days of watching R.A. Dickey win a Cy Young, like when the knuckleballer gets hot, you keep riding it. And projections have Waldron between like a 4.1 and 4.6 FIP the rest of the way. I think he's severely underprojected. He has a 3.3 expected ERA. I think that's where he can keep pitching. He has a 7% barrel rate. He's in the 87th percentile for hard hit rate, 81st for average exit velocity. He doesn't give up hard hit balls. The walk rate's going to be high because he's a knuckleballer, but they're never going to square it up with guys on base. So, or they will, but it'll be on nights where it's not flying, where the wind isn't right for him, where he gives up 9 runs. And that's fine. More often than not, I think betting the unders, or at least backing Waldron, is going to be the way to go. He'll have blowups, but more often than not, I think he's going to be an effective pitcher. So Mets under 8 to minus 108, and hopefully Waldron keeps on knuckling along.
I just want to add too, since I did go 3-0 on my player props in my last appearance, I did want to come with a few more this time. It was hard. There was a lot of games that a starting pitcher wasn't listed, so there was a lot of games you couldn't really. And I just did a quick scan through it, and 3 of them that jumped out at me. Kind of going with Zarilla's Cubs pick, Dansby Swanson, little day game action. He's got really good numbers against Kyle Gibson, and he looks like he's kind of back to form after coming back from that injury. So Dansby Swanson's one if you want an early one. O'Neal Cruz for the Pirates. He's been hitting right-handed pitching really well. Ryan Feltner is pitching for the Rockies. He's got an ERA of almost 6, and there's a lot of room in that Rockies outfield for Cruz to put one in the gap. And then I mentioned it, just Alex Verdugo, just for the vibes. So those are 3 guys that I'll probably look at. Follow me on Action, see if I end up playing those. But Dansby Swanson, O'Neal Cruz, and Alex Verdugo.
Hits RBI?
Yeah.
Hits run RBI?
Yeah.
Market? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Excellent.
Yeah,
Great work.
O'Neal's been hitting the ball a lot lately.
The Verdugo one's perfect because, like, I forget where he's in the lineup. I don't know where he'll be in the lineup, but, like, but the way everyone in that lineup's hitting, he's either going to knock Judge in or have Judge hit him in. So
there was a 2-week span where I think Judge had like 8 doubles and 8 homers, and Verdugo was like, "That's my entire season."
Yeah, I'm waiting. I'm very mentally prepared from what I do tune into this weekend, Aaron Judge, to send the Red Sox back down to earth, especially with the better pitchers throwing against the Phillies in the middle of the week for the Red Sox. So.
Yeah, Verdugo's met in 4th, so like all he needs is a single, and Judge is going to be standing on 2nd. So there's your hit and your RBI right there.
I think this version of Judge is better than the version we saw 2 years ago. This guy's like terrifying. This is the scariest hitter I've seen in a while.
He's going to dump all over the Red Sox this weekend.
He had 28 doubles and 62 homers 2 years ago. He already has 21 doubles this year. He's 25 homers, but he's already up to 21 doubles. Like the extra base hit pace is the same.
Wow.
Yeah, his slugging percentage is higher than it was 2 years ago. He's 690 versus 686. So yeah, I mean, OPS is higher. He's the same, but like slightly better.
He has 8 home runs in the last 2 weeks. 8 home runs in the last 2 weeks.
I have him and Gunnar on the same fantasy team, and I like can't get out of last place in the Action League. So it's been a lot of fun. My pitching's so bad.
All right. We'll take this offline. Don't forget, folks, download the free award-winning Action Network app and leave a 5-star rating and review if you haven't done so already. And you can still leave reviews. I shouldn't say if you've done it already. Please leave your reviews as the season continues. We will do some giveaways later in the month for some Action swag or a free Action Pro subscription, a 1-year subscription, so you can use all of the fine resources of the Action Network app. Also, you can follow along in our Action Network Discord channel. There is a link in the episode description of this podcast to the channel. For Sean Zerillo and Mike Iannello, Brendan Glasheen, we'll be back Monday morning of next week. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. Father's Day is on Sunday, so I'm sure that's a big theme. Baseball, they'll wear the blue sweatbands and the uniforms will align, so enjoy the baseball if you're a baseball dad out there. Thanks for listening to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's MLB betting podcast. We are presented by BetMGM. Have a great weekend and best of luck.